In this video, I'm going to go over these Adobe Premiere clip movement keystrokes. Alt plus drag clip creates a copy of the clip. Delete key and the Shift delete key ripple delete. The comma key insert edit and the period key overwrite edit. Drag clip to the timeline, overwrite edit. Control plus drag a clip to the timeline, insert edit. Control plus Alt plus drag a clip swaps the position of a clip. Alt and right and left arrows nudges a clip one frame right or left. Alt plus Shift right or left nudges a clip many frames. Alt up arrow and down arrow moves a clip up or down the tracks. Now another good way to make a copy of a clip, if you just take a clip and drag it somewhere, it takes it and it removes it and moves it down the line. But let's say I just wanted to copy that clip and put it somewhere. So I'm going to Control Z, put that back. Let's say I wanted to copy it and put it on another place on the timeline. So I hit the Alt key and drag, and now I can make a copy of it. And I can just keep making copies of that. I just hit the Alt key and it brings it, and all these are copies of that same clip just by hitting the Alt key. So Alt and then drag a clip copies it, and that's just a quick way to make a copy of a clip and put it in a different place in the timeline. Now the delete key is something that's used, and it's pretty obvious what the delete key does. You select the clip and then you hit delete, but that leaves a gap that, you know, sometimes you may want to close the gap, and that's called ripple deleting. So let me hit Control Z and bring that back. So if I want to do a ripple delete, I hit Shift and then delete, and then it deletes that clip and then closes the gap behind it. Hit Control Z. But the easier thing to do is, I have this set up to hotkey with me as X. It's just a ripple delete is something I use a lot because what I'll do is I'll use the C key and I'll create a cut here and a cut there, and then I'll select it, and then I'll hit X and ripple delete. It's just a quick way to make cuts. Is C, bam, boom, V, select X. So ripple delete is something that I use a lot. I suggest setting up a hotkey for it. For me, setting up the X was an easy thing to do. Okay, the insert edit and the overwrite edit tools are right here. And insert edit is the comma, and overwrite edit is the period. And I'm just going to go over the differences between those. And basically what those do is use those to take material from your source monitor and add it into your sequence. And you have to make sure that you have your source targeting selected correctly before you do that, because when you use these keys, either the period or the comma, it takes from the source monitor and adds it to your sequence. You have to tell it which track you want it to go to, and that is source tracking. So for instance, let's say for instance we have a part here. First of all, let's go into our sequence. We have a sequence of me and Al's talking about this ant killer. Let's say I want to add a little piece of me looking at the ant killer at the store. So I could find a part where I wanted to start, me browsing up and down. So I hit the I key, and that's my in point, and I create my out point here, and I want to go down and scroll down. And so I want to take this little 3-second clip, and I wanted to add it into my timeline right here. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. If I just hit the insert edit here, it is going to add it and insert in the middle of this clip. So what it's going to do is going to hit insert edit, and now it's added that clip. So basically all it did was add the clip, and if I'm in a sequence where I'm talking here and then I want to switch to this clip and what I'm saying and doing in this clip, and then go back to this clip, that the insert edit worked perfectly. I did exactly what I wanted to do. But in this case, I probably don't want to do that, because this is just putting B-roll. I just want to put this B-roll and continue. So I'm going to hit Control Z here. And I want to continue what I was saying here and talking about the insect killer with Alice. So what I'd probably rather do is use the overwrite edit. And I would select the tracks on adjacent to it. So I want that track to go in there. And so when I hit the overwrite edit, now it's going to go over top of that track, and it hasn't changed that track. It just has me talking about it, and then it shows me going in there and looking at the stuff in the store and then back. And that way, in this particular case, the overwrite edit works better. And if I had done the overwrite edit here, let's hit Control Z, And if I hit overwrite edit in here, it would overwrite that clip and would cut out whatever I was saying here. It would cut it out. So those are just the two different ways to bring material from your source mark. Hit Control Z here and bring it into your sequence. And if I wanted to clear my in out here, again, clear in out, you click on that that panel and that Shift Control X, and it clears my in out. I could start with a new in out. So just remember, it's comma for insert edit, period for overwrite edit, and that brings the material right into your timeline. Now, so instead of clicking on these tools right here, I could hit my in out and my out, and then wherever I move my playhead. And now if I just hit the comma key, it just automatically does it. Hit Control Z. And if I drop my tracks right here, and then if I want to hit my period key, it drops it in right there. So you don't have to use these tools up here. Sometimes they're convenient because they're right there, but the shortcut keys actually, if you get used to using them, are much faster. So that was the insert edit, comma key, and the overwrite edit, the period key. Now, when you're dragging a clip from the source monitor and you have your in out and you want to bring it into your timeline, normally you just bring it in and you drop it in. But let's say you want to drop it in somewhere into your timeline and you want to drop it in between some clips right here or on top of some clips. There's a couple of things you can do. One, you could just take the clip and drag it and bring it into your timeline right here. And wherever you drag it there, it will overwrite over top of what's in there. So you just drag it in there and it overwrites on top of what you brought it over to. So hit Control Z. Let's say you don't want to overwrite. Let's say you want to take this and you want to insert it into the timeline and into this clip right here. So what you do is you hold your Control key and you'll see you get this symbol up here on this line. It shows you that it's basically going to insert it between these edit points. And you'll see now it'll expand the timeline and it moves the timeline down. And it took that clip, put it in this position, and then moved the rest of the timeline down. So that did an insert edit instead of an overwrite edit. So when you hit the Control key and dragging that in there, it will do that. Now the other thing you can do, let's hit Control Z. We could bring it in here and we could bring it to these other tracks. Let's say we bring it to this other track and we just drag it in without hitting the Control key, and it will just leave it over top of it. Won't do it. It won't overwrite any of our current footage because we put it on a different track. So that's what we can do with that instead, and it won't overwrite. It's technically still an overwrite edit because it's taking over the same place in the timeline and didn't create a gap. Now the other thing we could do with hit Control Z is we can bring this in right here, and we can hit hit Control again, and we can bring it in here, and you'll see it now. It'll create a gap. So that tells you that it moved the timeline down. So it gives you an idea of the insert edit versus the overwrite edit and what the differences are. And this is just a different way of doing it, just dragging the footage into your timeline and using the Control key to decide whether you want it to be an insert edit or an overwrite edit. So when you hit Control, turns it into a insert edit instead of an overwrite. And that's the symbols. Let me just go over. You can see the symbols that you get when you put this in here. See, there's the symbol for our overwrite edit. And then our symbol for the insert edit is a little bit different. There's our symbol for the insert edit right there. And there we go. So that is your insert and overwrite edit. One thing to make sure you can see what I did right there is I let go of the Control key first. So when you're doing this and you bring this in, you have your Control key, you got to make sure that you hold your Control key down and then release your mouse, and it will let you insert. If I did the exact opposite, if I bring it down and I have my Control key in here and then I left my Control key off first, now it turns it into an overwrite edit and an overwrite it. So you got to make sure that when you do that, when you drag this down and you hit your Control key to do an insert edit, you got to make sure that you keep your finger on the Control key when you release the mouse and drop it. That way it creates an insert edit. So something that I do sometimes, and I've created an overwrite edit by mistake because I let my finger off the Control key before I released the mouse button. So that is the basically insert and overwrite edit by dragging from the source monitor into your timeline. Now, something I use all the time, what I call a swap position of tracks, does not have a hotkey, but let's say, for instance, I didn't want this clip right here. I didn't want that over here. Let's say I want that clip up here. So I could actually just take this clip right here and then I could hit Control Alt and then drag the clip. When I hit Control Alt and then drag the clip, you'll see it has this special symbol right here. And wherever I drag that, it'll drag into this position. As long as it's got those arrows, those insert arrows, and not those overwrite arrows, and I drag it into the clip and it moved it. So basically just swap the clip. If I hit Control Alt and I drag again, I can move it up here. You just got to make sure that it doesn't look like this, doesn't look like that, or like this. You want to make sure if you drop it right on an edit point, it's going to drop it and slip it between those two tracks. It doesn't change the length of your timeline. It just changes the position of that track in the timeline. It's good for swapping them around. So I get Control Alt, I can move this one back over here, and I can move this one back over here. And it just changes, whoops, I guess I didn't look at that right. So you can change the position, Control Alt, drag this here. And if I get the right symbol, it'll pop it in and drag it wherever you want it. So that is the swap position of a track. Control Alt and then drag. Okay, another neat thing about using the arrow keys is that you can use the arrow keys to nudge clips. So I'm going to zoom in on this clip right here. I'm just going to use my scroll and alt key. I'm going to zoom in on this little clip right here. And this is basically just a photo that's over top of my video right here. But let's say I don't want it right here. I want to nudge this whole clip one frame at a time downward. So I just hit the alt key, highlight the clip, use the alt key and the arrow, and it moves it one frame at a time. And you can see it moving down the timeline one frame at a time. Now if I hit the shift and alt key, now it'll move it that 5 frames at a time, or whatever I have set in that move frames many. Moves it, left key moves it, shift alt left moves it 5 frames at a time, alt moves it back 1 frame at a time, alt right moves it 1 frame at a time forward. So you can use a combination of shift alt, left arrow, and right arrow to move it either 1 frame or 5 frames at a time. So that's left and right arrow keys with the alt key or shift alt. And that's nudging a clip right and left on the timeline. Now another thing you can do with the arrow keys here is with the alt key. If you use alt key, you can move a clip up and down the timeline, up and down the track. So if you want to move this track up a track, it moves it up and down like that. Now, but you got to be careful is when you move it down, if you move it down over top of a clip that's already existing, it creates a cut in that clip. So you have to go back, and the only way to fix that is to hit Control Z and bring it back so it doesn't do that. So just Alt moves your clip up and down. I hit Control Z. I must have done something wrong. I didn't have it highlighted. So I have it highlighted and Alt up the arrow key, and it moves it up there. And what it does, it actually creates a new video track when I did that. So now I've got 7 video tracks up and down. So you can also do this with your audio tracks. You can just hit the Alt key and move it down 1, move it back up 1, just like that. And that's how you use the Alt key in conjunction with your up and down arrow keys to quickly move a clip from one track to another. Well, thanks for watching this video on my Adobe Premiere clip movements. Now I'm making a total of 5 videos all about simple Adobe Premiere editing techniques to get through the editing process faster. I made this cheat sheet which has all these techniques listed. It's a front and back. It's a spreadsheet. If you want it, please send me an email to the email that's listed in my About page. Like I said, I'm going to be making a total of 5 of these Adobe Premiere tutorials. If you want to see that playlist, please click down over here. And if you want to see more content from this channel, I do a lot of stuff like this, please think about subscribing to the link down there. And we'll see you on the next video.